Hello and welcome to this short tutorial. We're just going to look at some post-production and how to get things like this, the bloom that you can see in this image here. We're going to have a look at how you get that to work and some of the other nice functions you can get, post-production functions in Unity. Now, just to point out that some of these are quite taxing on the processor. So if you're making a VR game for a mobile phone or something like that, just be careful not to overload the phone, or your frame rate will drop massively. So I'm going to create. So you can see I already have everything kind of set up here. So I'm just going to create a new scene and then show you how to set up the new scene. So I'm just going to go. We'll go up here for new scene. So new scene, and I'm going to create a plane, and then on the plane I'll create a cube, and on that cube I will make this kind of glow and see if we can get it to kind of affect the world. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my directional light and delete it. I'm going to go to my main camera and I'm going to say I want a solid color and I want the world to be black. So now everything that the camera sees is black. And I'm going to create a new material. So I'm going to go create material and I'm going to call this red glow. And I can make it red here, but what's important is that I turn on emission, and then here I can change the intensity and make it red. So that's screaming red, and it's got an intensity of 4.5, so it's very bright. And then I'm going to drag and drop that onto my cube. And now you can see the cube, there are no lights in this scene. Because it's emitting light, it can be seen, but it doesn't have a glow or a bloom associated with it. So let's set that up. So on my camera here, I need to add a component from post processing. In order to get access to that, if I hit add component here, if I hadn't added a package in, the default settings, it wouldn't be available. So what I need to do is I need to go Window, Package Manager, wait for it to populate, and the one we're looking for is this one here at the top, post-processing. It should, yeah, I get a big load of them now. So these are all kind of built-in packages for that come with Unity. So you can see mine says up to date, remove. If you haven't installed it yet, you'll have an install button. So you just click on the install button. I think it'll give you a pop-up dialog box where you click import, and then everything is imported. After that, then you need to add a component here. So I'm going to go add component, and I'm just going to type in PO for the first two letters. So I want a post process layer. So that's what I'm adding in to my camera here. And I'm going to close up the camera component and open up this post process layer. So it's triggered by the main camera, which is what we have. And if you had a different camera, you would need to put, if you had multiple cameras, you'd need to put this on each one. But basically the camera that's being used requires this in order for us to see the effect. And this is an effect that we'll see in the game window and not in the scene editor. And hence it's called post processing, so it's after the scene editor. Now it's looking for a layer. So in Unity, we have layers up here. So we have tags and layers, and there's a whole bunch of them here by default. I've made this one here glow, and I've made one called ground. So how you make your own layers is you click on add layer, and then say layer 10 here. We could call this one, I don't know, Biffy. And then when I go back out, I can drag this down and I can select that as a layer. So for my cube, I'm going to select the layer glow. I'm going to go back to my camera and tell it that the post-processing effects are all going to happen to objects on the layer glow. Now you could just pick everything, and I've read quite a few pieces that argue whether or not that makes your processor do extra work or not, and I don't know. But I tend to just pick a single layer. I find that easier. And it gives you more control then over what can or cannot have these effects. So there's my glow, and my cube has an emitter. So now the cube needs a component. So I'm going to add in this component here, post process volume. I'm going to turn on is global. So this effect is going to occur in the whole, like affect the whole world. And then after that, it's a matter of what effect do I want to add. But before I can add an effect, it's saying here it needs a profile, and it says none. So this won't work without having a post processing profile. Now I've got one here, it says post corridor, because that's what I was building up above. To make one, and all I've done is make a default one, you just right click like you would any other object and go create, and you're looking for this here, post processing profile. And after you've made one, it'll look like this. Now I've already added things into mine, so add effect. So I'm going to make a new one. So I'm going to go create post processing profile, and we'll call this test. So I'm going to go back to my cube. So which one am I using? I'm using this one here, test. And on test I haven't added any effects yet. So let's add an effect. So let's start with adding bloom to get that nice glow effect. So I can open up bloom here, and I can turn it on, and then I can set its intensity. Okay. And I can have all sorts of controls here. I can set thresholds and knee, so how, like the fall off on the glow. I can do all sorts of really nice effects here using the bloom. So you can see as if it were coming off a piece of metal. Okay, so that's the first thing I can do. So I can add in bloom. There's lots of other effects I can add in. So for example, I could add in a color grade. So again, under the color grade, I can turn all these things on. I could say I wanted the whole world to have more red in it, because there's not enough red in that world. Or I could say actually what it really needs is more green, or an absence of green. Now obviously we've only one color in here, so color correction is not necessarily the most fruitful pursuit. And then we can add in things like depth of field, like we would if we were in Blender. And with the depth of field, it's asking me for a focal distance, so how far away. So if we bring this back and bring it forward, so we should be able to see the object coming in and out of focus basically. And because it's an emitter, it should basically turn into a bokeh when it's out of focus. So you can get really interesting effects, and you can add these in and play around with them. As I said, some of them are quite processor intensive. So if you don't want, or if you are going to make something for a mobile device that isn't terribly powerful, just be careful how many of these effects that you use. And if I go back to my level here, and I won't save that, you can see what I've done in terms of setup is I've put all of my lights are children of an empty. I have a mesh that I've imported from Blender, which is basically all my light sources on it. And on that mesh, I have not added the volume. What I've done is up here on the empty, I've added the post-processing volume, and that means these effects are happen to all of the lights, all of the sources underneath are affected by these. And I've turned on bloom and color grading. And you can see here the difference that it makes. So and you may prefer one look to another, so that's it without the color grading on, and that's it with the red turned down, and then this is with the bloom turned off, and this is with the bloom turned on. It makes a huge difference. Okay, so that's it in practice, how you use it. And if you have any questions, you can always fire me a mail. We'll leave it there for now.